teaching the summer camp, and then I go climbing with my friend Christy at Crux. And sometimes I don't want to talk on here because my experiences are so expansive, and it can be really hard to translate them in a video. And I know there are other people like me, which is why I sometimes feel that I should try. I've thrown around all these different diagnoses and of what I may or may not have, and I know I have PTSD, but that's kind of beside the point. Other type of neurodivergencies and things like that. I'm always like unsure and all these type of things. But what I do know for a fact is that I'm an HSP. And there's not enough research done on this, but there is a lot of research. And so that does mean that I experience the world a little differently than some other people. Just being that. And while I went to school, there are some things that overlap with autism, which make it hard to differentiate. But like when I started going to school and when I started making big life changes, like it was so difficult, and I get overstimulated and the type of things that are very similar to many other types of neurodivergencies. But the fact is just that I feel things so much, and it's so beautiful, and it is both a disability and one of the most beautiful things in the world. And it's interesting because bipolar runs in my family. Supposedly, people have been misdiagnosed with bipolar so often. I know so many autistic people who are misdiagnosed with bipolar, so many BPD people that are misdiagnosed with bipolar, so many people that were. And so for a while, I wondered if that was what I was experiencing. Definitely not. But the reason why is because the only thing that even kind of overlaps, even though it's not really an overlap, is that you feel things so intensely. I believed, I just created a world in my head where everyone was free, and I lived in it, and I met those people, and living and breathing the air where that was true, dancing on the sidewalks, and then finding those communities, and then falling in love and meeting her in the woods, and my life is like a fairy tale, and yet the things that make other people happy, like getting a promotion or buying some cool new clothes, that doesn't really impact me at all. Blindly listening to the goddess's voice in the woods and being so overcome that I can't speak any words, and walking up to a stranger, beautiful stranger, and no words coming out of my mouth, and just sharing some type of communication that's beyond words about some ancient past life that we both know what each other mean in that moment. Like, that is the type of world that I experience. And I couldn't tell you the universes that have been built and destroyed on these streets. I'm in North Austin right now. If you lived one moment in my life, in my world, in these memories, you would cry. You would be overwhelmed with beauty, more beautiful than the most beautiful poem you've ever read, or more fulfilling than any meaning that you thought life could have. And yet, all it looks like on the outside is a picture of, a lawn mowed grass. And you just don't know how happy those things make me, how the texture and the softness of that grass, and how I was loving on Mother Earth and trusting her. Driving down these streets, like the dates that I went on, the kinky conversations I had in this bar, this beautiful person, that I spoke with, that we had multiple partners and talked about living together and creating these rituals in the woods, and all of the magical, I couldn't even tell, you wouldn't believe, but all of the magical things that have happened on these streets. And some of them, they don't sound magic when I say them, because I can't possibly translate them. So as I rode down the streets, I could feel my heart just, and I blew kisses and thanked, the street signs and the streets and the people dancing on the streets and the little pub and the communities and the everything and the little places. Lovely, just gratitude that I'm able to accept those emotions. When I got to the climbing gym, it was like, and this is 3 years later, when a whole other set of wonderful things unfolded in my life. And the reason I'm saying all this is like, this has happened during school. I think I've talked about it a little bit in these vlogs. I haven't really known how to articulate it. Dysregulation doesn't just come from negative emotions, and it's not even a bad thing. However, emotions can be so intense with my neurotype and experiences and all of these things, where I could not ask for it any other way. It's beautiful. Like, I'm responding to this beauty that no one else is seeing. And it's not just my neurotype, I don't think, because nowadays in my everyday life I don't see it as much. So I do think it's also the location, the places where I was at are just more beautiful. And I was new to the world, over here and younger, and supposed to be going to class or something, and it's completely messed up, and I could not go to class. I would lose class out time. I would not be able to go to work, and I couldn't express what was going on, and it was really upsetting and confusing. And I could tell that there was a problem of not being in safe spaces, not being spaces where I could regulate. But I'm kind of putting a lot of it together now, is that I'm an HSP, obviously, and emotional dysregulation doesn't just come from negative emotions. My old stomping grounds in my home, and just, it's reminding me that the way that I am, the way that we are, the way that you may be if you're watching this, a lot of shame can come up from having those intense experiences. When you try to share them with someone, they can be not received very well, or you cannot be understood in them. And they've done a lot of research that shows that having difficulty with positive and negative emotional regulation can be associated with trauma, but I don't believe that didn't see anything. I wasn't able to look deeply enough into it to see if they had established temporal precedence. I'm going to go home now because always good to remember like food and grounding and all those type of things. But the only thing I didn't like about the research paper was they were pretty much painting emotional dysregulation of positive emotions as a negative thing. Even though they put in their thing, they're like positive emotions, dysregulation from positive emotions. 1, there can be a fear of these emotions. 2, can interfere with daily activity. 3, there can be a lack of acceptance around these emotions from the person themselves. But what they didn't mention is that there can be a lack of acceptance around those emotions from other people in that person's environment. And what was funny to me is that they were saying like emotional dysregulation, positive emotional dysregulation, it's like it needs to be accepted, but also gets in the way of goal-oriented activity. So it just kind of seemed like it was being framed in a way that was inherently like it needs to be fixed, but also needs to be accepted at the same time. Which, I mean, that makes sense, sort of. But I think that there might be a bigger piece there towards acceptance. Listening to some badass music right now and laying in my car. It's a rental. I cannot be my fullest self and thrive in this job. Even if I do get evicted, even if I do run into scary situations. I don't need to ruminate right now. You know what's hard about working in this treatment center? The structures are so rigid. I feel it. I'm like, these guys, they'd want to break shit. They're like, none of this makes any fucking sense. And I'm like, dude, same. Like, I feel you. And unfortunately, same. I'm not going to tell them that, though, because I have to keep my job. You know, I have to work. So it's like, when they're creating anarchy and chaos, I'm like, mad respect.
At the light, turn right onto East Hopkins Street.
Mad respect, honestly. And at the same time, you're making my life so hard. So it's confusing. It's a confusing time in there. You know what I mean? I'm never going to do something that I don't agree with. But when it's like, you have to go to bed at 9 o'clock because that's the rules. And then other people are like, don't cause chaos, don't cause noise, don't cause blah, blah, blah. And then you just want to punch a wall. And you're like, what difference does it make? Honestly, bro, I feel you. It's just like, goes against so much of me to be like,
in a half mile, turn right onto North Street.
I have so much paperwork I have to do. That's so mixed emotions addressed. Beautiful, beautiful day. Look at that sky. It was storming a little while ago, and so beautiful sky. But yeah, been doing school the last few days. There's a pretty rainbow I showed you a minute ago. Been kind of crazy, kind of weird because stuff having to do with this car and the rental car that I was on, battery dying, weird stuff, did mean that I didn't get as much work done as I could have otherwise. There's still no Wi-Fi in my apartment. I've never gotten Wi-Fi in my apartment, and I'm still working on applying to the other apartment that I don't know if I'll get, and then potentially having to do something else if I'm not getting that apartment. But I'm trying not to stress about that. I've just been doing school. My girlfriend unfortunately is sick, and I think I got her sick by going and visiting her, finding people that I am into. It's generally like
1 in, 700 people or something, or maybe more than that. But she was very gorgeous, and I asked her out, and it made me, even though she said no, I felt so good after asking her out. I also recently, a few weeks ago, matched with a girl on Tinder, and we were making plans, and she's kind of disappeared, seems to be really busy and stuff like that. But being on the apps, I've been matching with more and more like pretty girls, and I don't know if that's just me manifesting that, or if it's me, being my energy or what, or just my persistence. But it's really helping me to remember that I need to take care of myself, which is, I'm not saying that that's the best reason to do these things, but it makes me think, oh, if I'm actually to invest in this girl and she's gonna, ask what I have to offer, I do want to be doing my school and getting good grades and things like that, but I also want to be able to take her out, and I want to be able to have energy and my health to be good for that.